If Tua's healthy, I don't see why the Dolphins can't win the Super Bowl, and I don't see how the Dolphins are not the dark horse to win the Super Bowl. We know how good they are on offense. I'm not going to bore you all with that. Defensively is what not enough people are talking about. Vic Fangio is brought in now as the defensive coordinator. In my mind, he has really revolutionized the 3-4 defense. What is so good about the 3-4 defense? It is harder for an offense to understand where the fourth rusher is coming from. Won't bore you with that. What I will tell you is this. Last time he was a defensive coordinator, Chicago Bears, number 4 defense in football. He has commanded 5 top 5 defenses over the course of his career. That's 5 times, most notably with the San Francisco 49ers when they were great. Shady, Jalen Ramsey has shown up. When you have a player like Jalen Ramsey opposite Xavier Howard, now you know just how versatile you can be because you can lock the backside. You can say, hey, I will take out this receiver, safety, y'all push to the front side, play 5 defensive players on 3 offensive players. We have a numbers advantage there. Then offensively, where will the Dolphins ever be outmatched? That's the question I ask myself. There's not going to have a defensive secondary that can lock up Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Waddle is the number 2 wide receiver, had 1,300 yards last year, led the NFL in yards per reception. Where are you going to have a defense that can keep up with the speed of the Miami Dolphins? Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane, drafted in the 3rd round out of Texas A&M. So you might say, well, the Dolphins don't have a tight end. They don't need one. That's why they let Mike Gesicki walk. Secondly and lastly, you said this off camera. I'll say it on camera. When you think about the brilliance of the staff of the Dolphins, I don't know who's as significantly, if any, better. Mike McDaniel, one of the most brilliant offensive minds the game has seen. Vic Fangio, one of the most brilliant defensive minds the game has ever seen. I don't know a team, Shady, that can step on the field and have a significant advantage at any important position group over the Miami Dolphins.
So what if we gotten it all wrong? For the last 6 or 7 months, everybody's been talking about if Tua can stay healthy. If Tua can stay on the field, the Miami Dolphins can be Super Bowl contenders. What if Emmanuel Acho is right? What if everybody isn't looking at the main factor that will contribute to the success of the Miami Dolphins? I've been doing a lot of research. I've been looking at a lot of videos. I've been going back and looked at some of the game film. And it may actually be the defense, not Tua, not Tyreek, not Mike McDaniel. It may actually be the defense that's going to catapult the Miami Dolphins into being Super Bowl contenders. Call me crazy. I'm not one of those guys who puts out those predictions. I don't go out and say, here are the top 10 quarterbacks. I don't go out there and say, here are the top 10 of anything. What I'm trying to do is ask questions. And one of the questions I've asked myself and I've done some research on is, what happens if the Miami Dolphins can field a top-tier defense? So when you look at things from that perspective and put it in that lens, it says some things that, I think that Emmanuel Acho is really dead on with. That with a strong defense, if a Vic Fangio type defense can be a Vic Fangio type defense that he is known for, that could be the trigger. That could be the catalyst for the Miami Dolphins reaching Super Bowl level contention. Sound crazy? Not really, not when you think about it, because if he has a defense out there, a lot of the problems that the Dolphins got into last year wouldn't have happened. And so I saw what Acho said, and I wanted to play that. Now I got something else here where it was a segment on NFL Live with Mina Kimes and Shamu Marcus Spears. Very interesting take on the Miami Dolphins defense that I want you guys to think about. So we're going to look at this video, and we're going to react to it.
Where do they rank amongst the AFC East defenses? ESPN's Football Power Index thinks very highly of all 4 of them. All 4 of these defenses are ranked in the top 11 in the league.
And I don't think you can really argue with that. Yes, the Jets have a series. This is based upon last year returning players, but it doesn't really talk too much about new coaches. And so you can't really keep Miami at 11th based upon a Josh Boyer defense. This is a Vic Fangio defense. So to me, I don't put any stock, any credence in stats and rankings based upon last year.
With all 4 defenses rated that highly, FPI likes the Jets the most, the league's top unit. The Patriots and Bills aren't far behind. Half of the top 6 is teams exclusively from the AFC East. So, Mina, in your perspective, when you look at this division, are the Patriots top in terms of defense? I know. It's like choosing between kids right now.
Twitter mentions.
I know,
The
they're all so
mentions.
good. Okay, this is going to be, I guess, a bit of a bold take based on what FPI said, but I actually think Miami, who they had as the worst, still good defense in the division, I think they could finish as the best defense, guys, for a couple of reasons. One is last year, I know they had some ups and downs in the beginning of the season in particular, but in the second half of the season, the Miami defense actually finished 6th in DVOA and 6th in EPA per play, as well as 2nd in yards per play before going blitz crazy in the playoffs. The other thing is, obviously, we talk a lot about the addition of the brilliant Vic Fangio, but bringing in a brilliant defensive coordinator doesn't mean anything if they don't have players who can execute their scheme, and I would contend it is a perfect match of talent and play caller. You bring in Jalen Ramsey, David Long, a linebacker, both of whom are good fits. But they've got guys on the roster who can bring Vic Fangio's principles to life.
Now understand, Fangio, in an interview recently, I made a video about it, said he doesn't have all the pieces yet, doesn't have all the pieces to run the type of defense that he wants to run. Obviously, they may be looking at some free agents. They may be looking at bringing some guys who get cut from other teams during camp. But if he doesn't feel he's got all the pieces of the puzzle yet, and he still has to bring in some other guys, that's only going to make the defense that much better. And I think everyone who's hoping for Dalvin Cook, you may be missing something. You may be missing where the money needs to be spent. I believe it needs to be spent on defense so that Vic Fangio can get those holes plugged that he wants plugged.
One of which is he likes to play with light boxes. So you need a defensive tackle, a 3-tech, who can control more than one gap. Christian Wilkins last year finished first amongst all defensive tackles in the...
They got to extend Christian Wilkins. They got to extend him. Raekwon Davis, I think, is going to be fine. And, of course, we know Zach's going to be he's not as good as Christian, but he holds his own. I used to love watching the two of those guys and how they really upheld that middle of the field there, right up front. Zach and Christian Wilkins, boom, loved it. But they got to stay healthy. There's not much depth behind them.
NFL in run-stop win rate. Zach Sealer was 23rd. They are perfect for Vic Fangio's scheme.
And when you look at that 3-4 and you see Jalen Phillips on the left side and Bradley Chubb on the right, this is the type of scheme that really could control a game and give offenses a fit. If you don't know whether Jalen Phillips is coming, if you don't know if Bradley Chubb is coming, you don't know if they're both coming, you don't know if the safety's coming up, that's going to just cause an offensive coordinator. You remember last year where Dorsey was throwing everything during the Buffalo game? He may be throwing a lot more stuff come this year.
And when I think about Jalen Phillips taking another step, maybe Bradley Chubb getting back to who we saw earlier in this career, I would not want to go against this Dolphins defense, given some of the additions they made and the talent that they already have on their roster.
And the only thing that, like I said, scares me, I know we just signed Cam Smith, but the only thing that scares me is the depth. The depth could be a problem.
MK, that is bold, but I absolutely understand where you're coming from. But I'm going to the New York Jets. I'm going to the Jets. And the reason why I love their depth, I love their depth up front. I love it. John Franklin Myers, a very underrated defensive end, in my opinion. Obviously, we know Quentin Williams is emerging as one of the top D tackles, and Carl Lawson. They drafted Jermaine Johnson. But when you think about this is the context and the prism I want you to think about it from, MK. They will hopefully not be overexposed this year.
And that's what I think that Miami's offense can do. So when I look at what the defense can do and versus what the problem with New York Jets' defense is what he just said, having them overexposed. That's where Mike McDaniel needs to get to work. Last year, obviously, when he played him at the end, didn't have Tua. This year, hopefully everybody's healthy, but the defense is a lot different. So he mentioned Quentin Williams, and I think Christian Wilkins is right there with Quentin. You know, Sauce Gardner, you got to believe that Jalen Ramsey and those guys are just as good. So we're talking about apples to apples here. I don't mean no pun intended with the Big Apple, but obviously the Dolphins defense isn't the same defense they played last year.
This team and this unit was on the field so much last year, and they still played at a very high level. We talked about how they like to run and hit. We talked about how good Sauce Gardner was in his rookie year.
BS. Sauce Gardner got all the accolades, but if you watch the film, he got away with murder. He held, he interfered, and it was like to say, he's good, he's really good, but he got away with a whole lot.
Could you imagine for them playing with a lead and you having to throw away from Sauce Gardner all game long? Like, I'm looking forward to seeing if that is what makes this unit the best unit in football.
He could say the same thing about the Dolphins. Imagine being behind. Imagine Mike McDaniel's offense scoring enough points consistently to make you have to come from behind facing a Vic Fangio defense with that secondary and with Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips on the outside. If that doesn't scare offensive coordinators, I don't know what will.
Not just in their division.
They had the second worst field position in the NFL of any defense last year, to your point, Marcus. Yeah. That is going to change. Yeah. And psychologically, that is something I think like we sometimes underestimate the weight of playing defense when you know your quarterback is about to get you back on the field immediately. So that mindset is going to be massive for a Jets defense that was still phenomenal last year. Picking between these four units is like choosing between my babies. I think they're all so good. There's so much talent. And this division is honestly, it's a hellscape for quarterbacks.
Yeah, it is. It is an absolute hellscape for quarterbacks. And they're going to have to navigate that labyrinth all season long. 2 games apiece at each one of these teams. Aaron Rodgers, you're going to face Vic Fangio twice per year. It's no doubt, maybe even 3 times if it goes to the playoffs. So it's not going to be a cakewalk, but this isn't the defense that the Dolphins had last year. And it's going to continue to evolve through training camp.
Ooh, buddy.
Yeah. Can I just say, shout out the Bills? Like, not that you guys are disrespected. We haven't talked about them at all. Like, we just have to acknowledge the Bills. They're awesome on defense as well and should be like really they were the first half of last season when Von Miller was on the field and absolutely wreaking havoc at like 35 because he's the ageless wonder of pass rushers in the NFL. That defense.
That's why I hope to God that Austin Jackson is ready to go. I hope that Austin Jackson is ready to go to keep guys like Von Miller at bay, because that's what it's going to take. But I really do think this is going to be, as we've just heard, he likes Buffalo. Spears likes the Jets. Mina likes the Dolphins. There's lots of defense to talk about in this conference.
And that entire division is just loaded defensively.
So I'm putting it out there to you. What do you think? Because there's been so much made of Tua and Tyreek and Chosen and all the other guys on offense, bringing in Dalvin Cook, Mostert, all this stuff about the offense, and there's not been a lot of talk about the defense. And what I heard from Emmanuel Acho earlier kind of tells me, yeah, it's probably going to be the defense that's going to make the difference whether this team goes deep into the playoffs or is even a Super Bowl contender. Could be wrong, but defense wins championships. Defense has always won championships. Yeah, it's nice to have a Tom Brady. It's nice to have an Aaron Rodgers. It's nice to have a Hall of Fame quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. But you got to stop the other guys. You have to be able to put your team in a position for the quarterback to win the game. And now, going into the season, I believe that at this point, it's the Miami Dolphins defense that's more important and that could potentially catapult this team deep into the playoffs and possibly into the Super Bowl. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your opinion. Fins up.
Is anybody catching on to this Barry guy?